And how come I'm not home? Where's the big apple box that I asked for? Yes, folks, this is a little difficult for me to do, I must say, but here goes. As you've been told, our most excellent friend, Martin Gardner, has passed on following a magnificent career as a mathematician, philosopher, serious skeptic, author, columnist, ardent amateur magician, and game expert above all. No small part of the miracle that was Martin Gardner is the fact that he accomplished all of this in a mere 0.95 of a century. He would appreciate that designation because he was a mathematician, you see. Now this is not a memorial, no way. It's not an expression of grief, but an exuberant celebration of the man who I'm very proud to say I knew for more than 60 years. That was such a privilege and an honor for me. Martin Gardner was one of the most modest persons I ever knew, and since my basic professional background has been in show business, I've known very few modest persons, I assure you. This man could just not understand in any way the fuss that was made over him by celebrated personalities in science, in the conjuring profession, and an impressive spectrum of human endeavor. He could even get a little grumpy, Martin could, when confronted with the accolades that came his way, fidgeting a bit as if to dismiss the praise that was expressed. He was fond of reminding me of the fact that he never even took a class in mathematics after leaving high school, but he rather failed to accept the wonderful fact that he had contributed hugely to that discipline in a way that few others could have ever done. Since those he communicated with through his monthly column in Scientific American magazine were largely laypersons who might never have come upon his wisdom had the editors of Scientific American failed to retain his services for 24 years. Now, try as I might, I can't exactly recall when I first met this marvelous man, though I believe it was in the offices of Scientific American when Jerry Peel was the editor. However, I do recall one day in the late 70s when I was in New York, and I happened to find myself in the same New York City office building housed Scientific American. I dropped by to say hello to Gerald Peel, and found myself in his office with physicists Phil Morrison and Martin Gardner. Rather heavy company, I think you'll agree. Jerry chose to spring a surprise on those three renegades by producing from a cupboard a rather heavy wheeled contraption which he invited us to see in action, without explaining to us just what it was. It was to be quite a revelation, I assure you. He took this entourage down to the street, over to Fifth Avenue, and he began wheeling this mystery machine northward until he came to 52nd Street, at which point he stopped, opened the big box, and revealed an electronic device that had a basic old-style CRT tube in there, you know, the green line on the black background from way back, and other mysterious dials and settings. We had no idea what it was. Jerry proudly announced to us, and to the small crowd that was now gathered around us, that this machine would tell us within 200 feet where we were located anywhere in the United States of America. What we were looking at was a very, very early version of what we now know as the GPS system, and it had been entrusted to him, to Scientific American, as a prototype. Well, we naturally expressed our delight and amazement at this technological wonder, and though it operated, as far as I know, on only a few satellites were then up in space, somewhere, it did indeed accurately tell us the latitude and longitude at which we were located in this particular NYC location. Morrison, ever the wag, if you ever knew Phil Morrison, he had a great sense of humor, told Jerry and his audience that he had a better method, which required much less technology. He leaned back, looked up the street sign, and announced, "We're at 52nd Street and 5th Avenue." That was even more accurate, but I will leave to your imagination the response of Jerry Peel and the suppressed laughter of the small audience we had, and Martin never tired of telling that story. Once introduced to Martin, well, I admit that I seized every opportunity to be in his presence. His observations on conjuring techniques, his deep insight into the psychological facets of the conjuring art, and his ability to suggest variations of approach to the tricks and illusions I was already familiar with was something that I just could not resist. Very welcome to me, I assure you. Martin had serious problems with his eyesight and had undergone cataract removal in the early days when it wasn't as much fun as it is today. In those days, it was a most difficult ordeal, and all the rest of his life he wore very thick lenses. This severely limited his ability to perform as a magician, but in no way did it hinder his imagination. His many books on conjuring, directed toward children in many cases, are classics of simplicity and clarity even today. A remarkable coincidence, or was it, is that Martin and his wife Charlotte made their home in Hastings-on-Hudson at, are you ready, number 10 Euclid Avenue. Was this planned? Well, was the address just too attractive for him to resist? I never asked, and I wish I had. But the reason that the name Martin Gardner became so internationally famous, of course, is found to be the result of what he published on mathematics. His very first column for Scientific American dealt with the remarkable Hexaflexagon. There's a name for you. A geometrical wonder that can be created from a strip of Acme machine paper, and which I suggest you pursue if you have any interest whatsoever in a consuming, compelling, mysterious new activity that well may remove you from continued involvement in everyday life. So I warn you. But beware of getting as far as tetrahexaflexagons. That's just too much, perhaps, and you've been warned, remember. Look up the subject, start flexing, and prepare to move off to the nearest private cave to take up residence. A word here about delight. That's a word very closely associated with my concept and memories of Martin Gardner. Delight was one of his most important attributes. He could be easily seduced by a new idea, a new way of perceiving the world, or some surprise that simply made him chuckle and decide that he should share his discovery with his public, which he so often did. Along the way, he was dismayed by the fact that he saw so much deception in and out of science, and particularly in the field of journalism when it came to rationality and common sense. One of the very first books in 1957 was Fads and Fallacies in the Name of Science, in which he covered such myths and personalities as Atlantis, dowsing, reincarnation, Scientology, Albert Abrams, Ambrose Bierce, Blavatsky, and a selection of other absurdities. Uri Geller was still 17 years from joining the spectrum that he would come to his attention, the constellation of dark stars, as I call it. My copy of this book is inscribed by Martin to, where is it? Right here. Come on. To Randi, the amazing non-globalist from Martin. How good can life get? For the next 50 years, Martin continued to pursue this subject to the benefit of us all and to his own great satisfaction. It resulted in the creation of the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal, now CSI, which arose during one of our monthly meetings at a Manhattan French restaurant in the company of Isaac Asimov, Clayton